Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about what materials I recommend if you are just starting to learn how to sew and if you don't have a whole lot of space to store a bunch of sewing supplies. Right now my husband and I have a smaller place, so I try and keep it pretty pared down, but this is everything that I have that I find myself always reaching for whenever I'm doing a sewing project. Okay, so number one is obviously our sewing machine. So the sewing machine that I have is a Genome. This is her, kind of heavy. The different stitches that you want to look for when you're buying a new machine is you want to make sure it has a straight stitch, zigzag, and a stretch stitch. Everything else is kind of give or take. Juki has a really incredible industrial strength machine that I really love, however only does straight stitches. So if I'm doing my basting stitches or doing a project that doesn't need any zigzag or stay stitches, I love using that. But for the sake of storage, I usually just keep this Genome with me. This used to be my mom's and she got an upgrade, and so I got to take this one. I learned how to sew from my mother. She has a couture ballroom company. She actually has a channel here on YouTube called Cena Couture Dresses. So if you're interested in that, go check her out. She's incredibly talented, amazing work. I learned pretty much everything I know from her. And the next thing that I would definitely recommend, you don't need right off the bat, but is really helpful when you do make the investment, is a serger. This is the one that I have. It's just a Singer finishing touch. So I think this used to be my grandmother's, which is why it's kind of like faded, but it still works. If you take care of your machines, they can last forever, which is why they're definitely worth the investment. Or if you can get them secondhand, even better. I also linked everything down below if you are wanting to purchase any of the items that I talk about. And if I don't have an exact match, I did my best of a similar like item. So moving down our list, you are always gonna want a ruler. These are the few rulers that I have that I find very helpful. This is a 24-inch ruler, and then I also have this little suction handle that goes on it, and you just place it and then snap it down. This can be helpful when you're cutting a lot of fabric and you want your hands out of the way. And then another ruler I really like to have is this 18 by 3 inch clear. I definitely recommend getting clear rulers. It makes such a big difference when you're making your markings. The next set of rulers I have are curved rulers. You could be fine with just this one. I had to get this one for a pattern drafting class that I took. I do find it pretty helpful if I'm doing a smaller scale draft of an item, but I definitely recommend having this one. This is helpful for hip curves or armholes, which if you're making clothing, you're gonna need that. So definitely recommend these. And then of course, every good seamstress needs her tape measure. Okay, and then another item that isn't a total necessity, once you are used to it, it's kind of hard to live without, is a cutting mat. So this is the one that I have. This is a 35 by 24 cutting mat. And then to go along with our cutting mat, a good rotary cutter is a must. I really like this one because it has a lock on it, so you can press it in when you're cutting and then you can lock it. Something that I have found really helpful, I was gifted this toiletries bag set and I decided to use it for sewing because I already have my toiletries bag. So it came in a set of 3. So in the smallest one, I just have some scrap fabrics. This is helpful so when you are testing to see if your serger's correct or if you want to test out a stitch length. And we're gonna jump to the biggest one. Here I have just kind of some scrap fabric where I can do pattern drafts. I like to do self-drafted patterns most of the time. That's something I'm trying to kind of develop my skill a little bit further on. If I have any pre-made patterns that I've bought, I also just like to slide them in here. And then I also keep this notebook. It's just a quick little jot down. I can put any measurements or a quick sketch of the pattern pieces. Again, self-drafting, there's a lot to keep track of. And then the medium-sized bag. This is where I keep the majority of my supplies. I have just like this little pencil pouch, it has some markers, pens, highlighters, also some extra blades for my serger, and then a pencil sharpener with my chalk pen and my refills. A good pair of cutting shears is always a must-have for sewing. Okay, and then a lighter is definitely a must. This is helpful to burn any extra threads and clean up your edges. And then a seam ripper. This one actually has a little light. And then I also have this little kit that my mom got me. So it has a few different things. It has 2 seam rippers, a set of a bunch of needles. It also includes some little tweezers, and then it also has 2 of these ring thimbles, and then it has a ton of these little needle threaders. This is a extendable magnet, so basically when you are done sewing, you can extend this and run it along the floor or your counter, and it will pick up all of your pins. Another similar find is this magnetic wristlet. It's like one of these little snap bracelets. You just put it on your wrist, and then as you sew, you can just easily grab pins. And both of these aren't the most necessary, but they are really nice and really helpful when you do have them. And I'd also recommend a small set of scissors. Little clippers like these are really helpful, especially when you're just cleaning up threads throughout a project. And then obviously a pack of straight pins is a must. There's a few different kind of pins that you can use, but the straight pins with the little bead on the end, I feel like are really universal, especially if you're just starting to get into sewing. I would recommend just getting those. And then a roll of painter's tape, super helpful for your patterns. And that is everything that I keep in the medium-sized bag. If you've made it this far in the video, comment down below what item I mentioned that you might not have yet, but you are interested in. This stuff is the best for patterns. It is called Swedish pattern paper. It has the structure that you would need for a pattern, but it has a little bit more flexibility as if it were a piece of fabric. This one is not a total necessity, but for me it is because, like I mentioned, my Janome machine is a hand-me-down and the bobbin winder does not work the way it should. So I have this bobbin winder. It's just this little guy. You can plug it in. Basically, you set your spool of thread over here, you put your little bobbin on, press this button, and it spins. If there are little quirks with your machine, try looking up and see if there is something like this that might be able to solve your problem. Okay, so the next item that I use for all my projects is my iPad, and I use Procreate to do all of my fashion sketches. Check out Aleena Couture Dresses. On her channel, I have a video explaining how we use Procreate to sketch our couture ballroom dresses. So I always use Procreate when I am drafting my own pattern, so then I know what pattern pieces I need to make. This is from when I took a pattern drafting class, and this was our final. This is the first draft, which brings me to my next item. I have this tiny little 8th scale mannequin. I got this when I was taking my pattern drafting class. This is really helpful if you are trying to understand pattern making and pattern drafting. And then it's also really helpful if you are learning how to drape, because you can practice on a smaller scale so you can still gain the same knowledge without having to use as much fabric. If I'm trying to figure out a pattern I haven't used before, I like to make a mini version so I can iron out the pattern and make sure it is nice and smooth when I go to full scale in my finished fabric. Okay, and this is my #1 item that I think every seamstress needs to have in her collection. It's a giant binder. So basically, what is in here? This is from when I took my pattern drafting course. I'll put on the screen the book that we used throughout this course, and you can pretty much recreate all of this if you look through that book. We went down this assignment list and learned how to make a pattern for different kind of darts, clusters, seams, skirts, sleeves, collars, literally everything. So this is like the holy grail. And we started off with slopers. So this is the back bodice for pattern drafting. Once you have your sloper, you can make any adjustments of where you want your darts or how you want to change it. And once you have your sloper, you're good. And then also in here, I have a little project that I am in the middle of. So stay tuned for when that gets finished. And then I also have a few other patterns stored in here. This binder has definitely been through it, but it is my holy grail. So yeah, you can see single dart, clusters, princess seams, collars, and then I also have a few other like little project plans in there. And here's my midterm. Super cute. And that is everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out a few of my other videos. I recently posted some Kindle cases that I had sewn, as well as a black velvet evening gown that I really love how it turned out. So go show those shorts some love. Be sure to check out Aleena Couture Dresses on YouTube. And also I post interior design content as well as sewing and fashion and a little bit of travel. So be sure to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.